All right, now we're going to talk about Cultivation's magic system. If you haven't seen my other video talking about void binding and what we know about that, just did a video about that, and now we're going to answer the second part of this question: what do we know about Cultivation's magic and how it works? For this, I went to the Coppermind Word of Brandon hub, searched up the Cultivation tags, and here's what I was able to find. This is going to be spoilers for all of the Stormlight archive. So here we have a February 2016 question from the Calamity release. So, gosh, we're talking about 8 years ago now, almost to the day. How many magic systems are there in the Stormlight archive, and how many of them haven't been seen? Brandon, I would say that the major ones you haven't seen is void binding. It depends on how you count them. I count fabrials as one, surge binding as one, and void binding as one. And then the old magic is kind of its own weird thing. Now, old magic is Cultivation's responsible for that. But one thing I want to keep in mind is how similar fabrials are to what the Parshendi do, and what the singers and the listeners and the fused do with their gem hearts and trapping a Spren and then doing something with that trapped Spren. So let's keep that in our minds as we go. So let's look at another word. And if you ever wanted to know, hey, can I always trust a word of Brandon? Be careful. So we just literally saw him say that fabrials are their own magic system. And then Dunkelheit over here, just 2 years ago, December 2nd, 2022, less than 2 years ago, Chris mentions the Ars Arcanum that her research suggests another set of abilities more esoteric than the void bindings. You've said before that the only magic we haven't really seen is void binding, but you've also said that no one has used cultivation magic on screen. Not counting boons and curses. Is this other sort of esoteric ability Cultivation's magic? Is it called life binding? Raffo! What a great question. What an excellent question! Remember that when I originally conceived the Stormlight Archive, I was thinking of 30 magic systems, and I decided that that was instead 3 groups of 10, and I wasn't going to call it 30 magic systems. And indeed, that's even vague, because are fabrials their own magic system? We just read a word of Brandon that says they are! What's going on? But anyway, who knows? Raffo. So, just a reminder, these words of Brandon are helpful. They're guiding us as kind of like what he's thinking behind the scenes, but always subject to change, always subject to modification as he develops the series and as he explains things more clearly in text. But let's just keep that in mind as we go forward. Let's look at the next one. Now, this was interesting. Krem and the Pure Lake on Roshar, do they have any connection to cultivation? I would have thought, maybe. I guess. And a connection, for any of you who go to ask Brandon a question, be careful. Connection is a very tricky word for Brandon because everything's connected to everything at some level. I've literally heard him say that at panels. So just be careful with that. But do they have any connection to cultivation? Yes. So Brandon says both existed on the planet before cultivation arrived. And then Lyndall clarifies, but are both influenced by her now? Yes, she influences both. Again, influences, a very vague word. Be careful with that. Connection, influence. This was back in 2015 when we weren't all quite as careful about how we worded things with Brandon. But I really like the idea that I've got a video about Krem possibly being Cultivation's physical form on Roshar, being distributed as part of the High Storm. I think that'd be very poetic. And the Pure Lake being influenced by her is also very interesting because remember, there's the fish in there that are supposed to give particular magical abilities. And the wildlife on Roshar, it particularly seems to have been affected by cultivation. Let's look at the santhids next. Anything you tell us about the santhids? This was October 2015. They're one of a few Rosharan animals with a degree of sentience. It's easier on Roshar for this to happen. We've got the santhids. We've got, as of Rhythm of War, that chasm fiend seems to be particularly intelligent, working with the singers out there, the listeners. And then we've also got the Rashadium as well, right? Who all seem to have this special level of intelligence. And then Kayla says, because of cultivation, and Brandon says, yes. Also, santhids aren't based on anything particular on Earth. Now, my theory on this is that it has to do with cultivation's magic system. Remember fabrials. What do fabrials do? They have a gem, Spren gets trapped inside, some effect happens. How do chasm fiends work? How do santhids work? How do Rashadium work? There's a gem heart inside of that being. Trap a Spren inside, something special happens with that being. Fabrials and the creatures of Roshar seem to be working on the same basic principle, which is why I think he's been a little coy, saying, well, fabrials are their own magic system, but are they their own magic system? Fabrials might be humanity's way of copying what cultivation does with her magic system. And let's look at one more word of Brandon. are the Parshendi of Cultivation. This was acted in 2014, not originally. And what is the big thing that Parshendi do? They take a Spren into their gem heart and then use that Spren to transform, to get magical abilities, to modify their existence in the same way that fabrials trap a Spren to then gain an ability to do something special. So I think the big reveal that we're going to see as we go forward in the Cosmere is that fabrials and cultivation are basically the same thing. It's just that when you're doing it via a fabrial, the sibling is going, oh, this is a perversion of what cultivation does, and I don't like it. That's why the sibling doesn't like fabrials, because we're trapping a Spren forever against their will, whereas with the Parshendi, they're inviting the Spren in, right? There's a ritual to it. You're going out, you're aligning your emotions, inviting them in, and having that different thing. So I think we're going to see that Cultivation's magic system involves the symbiosis with a Spren, where that Spren then cultivates within you some new power, some new ability. So thanks for coming to my TED Talk on Cultivation's magic system. Can't wait to be proven wrong about 90% of this when Stormlight 5 comes out, or 6 through 10. And let me know what your thoughts are about Cultivation magic and where we might have seen it. Oh, bonus prize here at the end. We do know that Cultivation's vessel is a dragon, and if you've read Tress, light spoilers for Tress, we do see some evidence there that dragons work through the exchange, right? You've got to give something to get something, and the boons and curses do certainly seem to fit within that. You're giving up something to get some boon from Cultivation / the Night Watcher. So I do think that is the idea, that you're having to give some relationship there and with the Spren to gain this access. So look forward to hearing from you.